Simon and Clara were police officers in London, and on this particular Tuesday morning, Simon was visibly frustrated. Clara noticed his troubled expression and asked what was bothering him. Simon explained that someone had been stealing money from people near the shopping district every single day, and they desperately needed to stop this criminal. Clara agreed immediately, though she wondered aloud who could be behind these thefts. Simon had a theory. He'd noticed a jogger who ran through the area daily, sometimes bumping into pedestrians. Perhaps this jogger was their thief. Clara thought it was worth investigating, so they decided to stake out the shops together. They positioned themselves upstairs in a building overlooking the street, where they had a clear view of everyone passing by. Simon brought his police radio, and they settled in to watch carefully. Before long, Clara spotted the jogger. The young man was running when he suddenly collided with an elderly woman, causing her to fall. The jogger immediately stopped and placed his hand on her arm, apologizing profusely and offering to help. He even handed her the bag she'd dropped. Just then, a young woman on the street shouted at him angrily, calling him dangerous and telling him to leave. The jogger quickly ran away. Simon grabbed his radio and called for backup, instructing officers to stop the man who was now running up North Street. Within moments, a police car intercepted him. Meanwhile, Clara checked on the elderly woman to make sure she was all right. The old lady thanked her but mentioned she could unsee the helpful young woman from the street anymore. When Clara asked if she had all her belongings, the elderly woman looked through her bag with concern. Her money had been in her purse, but the purse itself was completely missing. Simon decided they needed to question the jogger immediately. When they confronted him, they learned his name was Luke Perkins. He seemed genuinely confused about why police officers were interrogating him. He explained that he ran past the shops every day simply because he enjoyed running and lived in the neighborhood. Simon insisted on searching him for the stolen money, but Luke protested that he never carried money while running. Despite a thorough search, Simon found nothing on him. Luke grew angry at being detained without cause and demanded to leave. Simon reluctantly let him go, but warned him not to return to the area. Luke left angrily, insisting he'd done nothing wrong and had every right to be there. Back at the shops, Clara and Simon felt completely lost. The money and purse had vanished. Yet the obvious suspect had been clean. Simon admitted he didn't understand what was happening, and they needed to find another approach. That's when Clara noticed a security camera mounted above one of the shop doors. They went inside and reviewed the footage carefully. The video showed the elderly woman withdrawing money from the bank and placing it securely in her purse before putting the purse in her bag. Simon asked Clara to watch closely to see if anyone was paying particular attention to the woman. The street was crowded, making it difficult to identify suspicious behavior. Clara thought she saw a man with long hair watching, but she wasn't certain. They continued watching. The footage showed Luke colliding with the old lady, stopping to help her, and then being yelled at before running away. Many people gathered around the fallen woman to help. Clara noticed the long-haired man holding her arm. But then something caught her attention. A woman was handling the elderly lady's bag, though her actions were blocked from view by another person standing in front of her. Simon suddenly had an idea. He suggested that Clara go to the bank the next day, withdraw a large amount of money, and make sure everyone on the street could see it. She would carry a radio so they could communicate. Though Clara was initially skeptical, she agreed to the plan. The following morning, Clara entered the bank, while Simon and another officer named Paul watched from a distance with radios ready. Clara announced she was withdrawing the money, and Simon instructed her to display it openly. As she left the bank, she deliberately dropped some bills near her feet. Several people looked in her direction, including the long-haired man. Paul asked if they should arrest him, but Simon told him to wait and observe. The man picked up the money and kindly returned it to Clara, warning her to be more careful with such a large sum. He smiled warmly and walked away. Simon checked with Clara to confirm she had everything, and she did. Simon then instructed Clara to shop at the stores and walk slowly down the street while they continued surveillance. Clara bought apples, milk, and bread, then began walking as directed. Simon and Paul watched carefully as Clara asked if anyone was following her. Simon reported seeing only a woman with a baby. Clara provided updates as she turned into different streets, mentioning that the woman with the baby seemed to be following her. When she turned into a quiet lane, she suddenly cried out for help over the radio. Luke Perkins had run into her again, causing her to fall and scatter her groceries everywhere. He apologized and tried to help, while the woman grabbed Clara's arm, asking if she was okay. Clara shouted at Luke to leave, but he spotted the police radio in her pocket. His demeanor changed instantly as he demanded the money and snatched it from her before running away. The woman tried to chase after him, but Clara held her back and identified herself as a police officer. The woman, who said her name was Phoebe Thompson and claimed to live on Old Street, insisted she didn't know Luke and only wanted to help recover Clara's stolen money. Simon arrived and checked on Clara before chasing after Luke, while Clara called for backup. Paul spotted Luke turning into Dock Lane, but the jogger was incredibly fast. When Paul caught up to him near the river, Luke jumped into a boat. Paul followed him into the boat, announcing himself as an officer. But Luke struck him, causing Paul to fall into the water. The boat sped across the river toward a cafe. Simon helped Paul out of the water, and they saw Luke entering the cafe. They ran across a nearby bridge, with Paul positioning himself behind the building while Simon went inside. When Luke emerged, Paul confronted him, but Luke produced a knife and threatened to use it. While Luke was focused on Paul, Simon quietly approached from behind. He grabbed Luke's arms, allowing Paul to disarm him safely. Simon found the stolen money in Luke's pocket. Back with Phoebe, she claimed she wanted to go home because her baby was tired and hungry. She continued denying any connection to Luke or involvement in theft. However, when they returned to the office and reviewed more footage, Simon and Clara discovered the truth. The video showed Phoebe watching Clara withdraw money and immediately calling someone on her phone. She'd been following Clara and providing updates to someone throughout the entire operation. When Clara asked to see Phoebe's phone and pressed a number, Luke's phone began ringing in the evidence bag. The connection was undeniable. During another interrogation, Phoebe finally admitted she knew Luke but continued denying theft. Simon and Clara took her home to search her residence. They found £200 hidden under her bed along with the elderly woman's missing purse. Clara picked up a photograph showing Phoebe, her baby, and a man she'd claimed not to know. When Clara asked if the man was the baby's father, Phoebe's resistance crumbled. She broke down and confessed everything. Yes, Luke was her partner and the baby's father. Yes, they'd been working together to steal money from innocent people. She apologized repeatedly, but Clara's response was firm and unwavering. What they'd done wasn't okay at all. They'd targeted vulnerable people, used a baby as cover for their crimes, and shown no remorse until they were caught. As Simon prepared the arrest paperwork, Clara looked at the young mother and felt a deep sadness. These weren't hardened criminals, but desperate people who'd made terrible choices. Choices that would now cost them their freedom and tear apart their family. The baby in the photograph smiled innocently, unaware that everything was about to change forever.